You are listening to the Digital Shelf Insider podcast of MetricsCart, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital shelf. Join our host and e commerce leaders across multiple industries for in depth discussions on how to maximize your brand in the digital arena. Today, we have a very special guest on the episode. We have Morgan McAlenney with us. He is the VP at Public Label. He's been on similar roles at Stackline, Salsify, Integer Group, and his career spans more than 20 plus years in the e commerce space. Welcome to the show, Morgan. So pleased to have you. Let's kick it off with a brief intro about you, your career, all things great so far.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. So you already mentioned a couple of the stops that I've had along the way. My career has always actually been in e-commerce and digital marketing. I left college, graduated college in the early 90s and joined a company called America Online, AOL, the original internet company, if you will. While there, although just a junior associate in the organization, I worked in both the online shopping group and the digital media group. So the advent really of e-commerce and online ads. I worked as a relationship manager with some of the big brands and catalogers that were, efforting to figure it all out. Spent the 90s there. I decided to pack up, moved to Denver, Colorado, and I found my way to the Integer Group, which is an omnicom shopper marketing agency, shopper marketing, promotions, digital marketing. I spent 19 and a half years there. I really grew up there. I mean, I grew up at AOL first, but then I grew up again at the Integer Group, leading really a department or a division of Integer focused on digital marketing and e-commerce and helping consumer packaged goods brands figure out their way into this new retail environment. Big consumer packaged goods companies have scalable and sustainable models for going to brick and mortar retail, but there was no playbook, so to speak, for how they should work with Amazon.com or Walmart.com or Target or Kroger or any of the big .coms that were popping up.
This was
And so
early in 2000s?
Yeah. And so we really hit our stride in terms of counseling these brands in the early, 2010, 11, 12, 13, et cetera. But we set the frameworks up in the early 2000s, before e-commerce was cool, so to speak.
Right.
And then I jumped over to the software side and spent 4.5 years at Salsify, which is a product information management platform, really a database, if you will, for brands to store all of their product information and publish it out, syndicate it out to all the e-retail points that they're trying to get to. And then I jumped over to Stackline, which is sort of a little bit more on the back end in terms of analyzing the key metrics that a brand would care about inside of Amazon, inside of Walmart, et cetera, and how you stack up against competitors. So that's me in a slightly lengthy nutshell. The headline would be, I've been in e-commerce a long time.
Right, that's so awesome. So at Public Label, there is this emphasis on helping brands to meet consumers exactly where they are. How do you guys do that?
Yeah, so it's both how do we meet consumers where they are, but also what the consumer wants to consume where they are, right? So the how part is more of a media equation, right? It's if they're at a retailer, a brick and mortar retailer, what do you put in front of them to motivate them to convert and buy? If they're choosing a retailer, whether it's brick and mortar or digital, again, you have to attract their eyeballs and their minds to want to find your brand at their retailer of choice. So it's sort of a media equation, right? I'm not trying to make it a short, simple answer, but that's sort of the how, right? Like analyzing where your shoppers are making decisions and being in front of them at those points and spaces. What we think the real magic is, or the secret sauce is what do you say to them to get them to convert? So we believe that every public label has a rich history of demonstrating to its clients our belief, which is we believe that customer, consumer, shopper touch points should convert. There shouldn't be any wasted time or energy. You should always be driving to a conversion. And again, that's my experiences in the e-commerce space, but as a full service commerce marketing agency, we have experience in the e-commerce space, in the brick and mortar space, and then the new emerging spaces, which would be like, for lack of a better term, the social spaces, whether it's Instagram or TikTok or any of the new platforms that are popping up.
Yeah, that's interesting. So let me tell you a bit about what we do at MetricsCart. We have about 3 digital shelf metrics that we crucially focus for brands on, and one is map monitoring, because there's a rampant amount of unauthorized sellers out there and brands need to keep an eye on them. And 2 would be rating and review analysis and monitoring, because it's again a gold mine of insights. Again, the closest a brand could understand and listen to their consumers and show that in the product building and campaigns and better way of connecting with them. And 3rd would be optimizing product listings, which is so crucial for conversions. And so I mentioned 3 metrics out here. What are your thoughts on these digital shelf metrics, and how should brands weigh them to keep the organic growth going?
Yeah, it's a great question, because like you said, your organization is focused on those 3 key metrics, really, or those buckets of metrics: map, ratings and reviews, and content completeness, compliance,
Too many words to go about it.
optimization, right?
Yes.
And it's a great sort of problem question. The problem is there's so many metrics you could be wrestling with, and you could be trying to maximize and optimize. But really, I think the answer is a little bit complicated and requires us to think about the brand we're talking about and what life stage that brand is at, right? So a brand that's never been a first party seller on Amazon, there might be all kinds of map problems, right? And then therefore that might be the first most important metric to be looking at. But I think more generally speaking, if you're a brand that has its foundations set, some good retail buyer relationships, in the stable, I think you really want to look at call it the 3 basic buckets of metric. And the first would be, what are those sources of traffic? And are you getting traffic? And is it organic? Is it paid? Are you maximizing the amount of traffic versus what you're spending to get it, if you're spending, right? The second big bucket might be, call it conversion metrics, right? Are people clicking the buy now button? Are people responding to the promotions that you're running? Are you having to run promotions? Are your ratings and reviews influential to drive purchase, or are they detracting from purchase? Are people abandoning the cart after they scroll down to read your ratings and reviews? And then the final bucket would be, and again, this is my opinion or our opinion, sales metrics, right? Like, are we selling at a profitable margin? Are, what's happening with, returns, et cetera. So if you think about, again, your general approach to e-commerce, I think about it in those 3 buckets. But again, you at MetricsCart may have more specific metrics that you're looking at for very specific reasons.
Yeah, that's true. That's right. So when it comes to optimizing product listings, what do you think are the common mistakes brands are making? Now, again, this is very variable when you say, the like you mentioned about the life stages of the brand,
Yeah.
as well as the category that they are in. But there are certain things that they go wrong with the hero images or a lot of things. What would you like to add on?
Yeah, there's probably a top-down analysis that all brands should be doing. I think your question about what are the mistakes, the biggest mistake is not attending to content compliance, not caring or having the human resources to look at how you look on the shelf, and then not being able to affect change within your organization. You and I can sit here on this podcast and say, hey, that brand should change all of their imagery. But the process to change the imagery can sometimes be onerous, right? I'm a marketing manager. I'm selling these reading glasses, and I'm now aware that I should be changing the imagery. Well, do I have to hire a photographer? Do I have an agency? Do I have AI do it? Is there historic imagery that I should use? Who has to approve that? Does my boss, or can I just go ahead and do it? And then do I have a system to upload it into Amazon, or is it a manual process? Do I work with Salsify or Syndigo or one of the other providers? So sometimes that can create inertia, right? Like, I don't want to even go look at my product pages because I know I'm going to find a bunch of problems that's going to create a bunch of work streams that actually are, lower down the food chain on my metrics of success with my boss. And so sometimes you really need that missionary, that zealot, that person that believes that they're going to get promoted or to the next phase in their career to really care about the basics, imagery, copy, bullet point copy, making sure the product specifications are right. And then as you go down further below the fold, the advanced, enhanced content, the ratings and reviews, and all of those things that really in a shopper's eyes are super important for making a decision, right? Where again, I just talked about on the brand side, you might be burdened by, call it the work, if you will, and you might be undermanned, understaffed, and you have to prioritize what work you're going to go after. Well, go after the 20% of your SKUs that are driving 80% of your sales and be ruthless about it,
Yeah, yeah. It must be a lot crazy at the end of the brands, whether they are a small brand or a large brand. Now, you mentioned when it comes, I'm just, kind of boxing them into two groups. When it comes to small brands, it could be a problem with resources. And then when it comes to larger brands with multiple SKUs, spanning across like 1,000, 2,000, that range, again, that's a problem. So I guess it's quite tough.
Yeah, and it's like, again, if we're living in a world where we're talking about big brands and small brands, let's assume big brands have their house sort of set up.
Yeah.
Then the next step is getting your house in order. Do you have a hierarchy internally which will allow you to process updates and new SKUs and optimize SKUs in a way that is in timing with what the shopper wants to see? So right now we're looking at the holiday season. Have you optimized your imagery and your lifestyle photos to mirror what the shopper is seeing in the world around them? Holiday thematics, holiday messaging. And if you go to the Amazon page for that brand and it's pretty vanilla or straightforward or standard issue, it's like, what is the risk? I don't know. There might be low risk for reading glasses, but for, chocolates or, consumer packaged goods, there might be high risk because your competitors are doing it. And, you don't want to be a me too, but you also don't want to be conspicuous by your absence.
Right.
So
that makes a lot of sense. So we're just 1 month away to 2025, and probably by the time this podcast episode releases, it could be like end of December. So what do you see as the, digital strategies that CPG brands can focus on to future-proof their, content? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. A quick personal aside, my birthday is December 27th. So if this releases then, that would be a nice birthday gift, right? Future proofing brands, I think, is really as simple as being aware of what's happening in your category. So again, I've been using the men's reading glasses example. If you're simply aware of what's happening in the category, you can make reactive decisions, right? And then you can start thinking proactively about how to try and gain ground versus your category competitors. The problems you as a brand face internally, human resources, process, agencies, etc., is shared by your competitors as well.
Right.
So it's important not to feel the burden of, I have so much work to do and I don't have enough resources and I have to get out ahead of this, because your competitors are feeling that too. So I think in order to be good at content, you have to first be good at streamlining, working in an agile manner, daring to, take some risks. That doesn't necessarily mean cut corners, but publish iteratively, right? In this day and age, you can be really much more agile. And I think the shopper will show you what content is meaningful to them if you can be iterative, if you can be agile. So I guess that's my sort of the $1 million advice is dare to be agile, right?
Yes. Yes. Agile is the word. So we've come to the end of the show, and it was a blast having you on the show, Morgan. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. I love talking about it. So happy to do it anytime.
Yeah. And where can audience find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn at my full name is Morgan McAlenney. You can find me personally and professionally there. Public Label, the agency that I work for, is also very available on LinkedIn. And those are probably the best ways to reach out. Public Label is an agency that's been very, I'll say vocal, but active in publishing little thought pieces, 2-page white papers, and really trying to be vocal in the e-commerce space, as brands are wrestling with this complicated omnichannel environment.
Now that's the end of our episode. If you love what you just listened to, you should check us out on LinkedIn. We have our newsletter series there. We also have our newsletter series via email with super exclusive e-commerce insights. This podcast is also on Spotify and Apple. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube. Wherever you're listening from, you have a great day, and we'll be right back with an awesome guest next week.